afternoon. My name is Chum Sturvey. If I have not had an opportunity to meet you, and I just want to thank everybody for coming out on this super cold day. I don't know how many layers you have on. I have 3. So we will resume on the third Wednesday. That's January 18th. That's our typical week. And our speaker that day will be Kathy Paper, and she will be talking about unleashing your inner rock star. So most of you actually should have got an email from me today about it. We're also on clubby.com, our Facebook page, and also Meetup as well. And I want to just quickly recognize our sponsors. We have Sunbelt Business Brokers of Minnesota, a new sponsor. Richard Johnke is here. The University Club, and we have some University Club members here as well. Olsen Thielen CPAs. Mike is here, and they are a locally based full-service accounting and consulting firm. Schwegman, Lundberg, and Worcester, IP attorneys for high-tech companies. Digital agency, the Irish Titan, helping companies with e-commerce and digital strategy. And my company, Legal Shield, providing identity theft protection and legal plans for employees. If you're interested in partnering with Club E, please come see myself or Rick Brimacombe. I'd like to introduce our speaker, and I actually met him. He was recommended to me by someone that I respect, and when I heard him speak, he had a very unique stories and philosophy, so I'm excited to bring Earl up. Earl Morrill Stinson is the founder and CEO of Stellar Impact International, a training and coaching certification company in the personal and leadership development industry. The founder of the In Essence Life ecosystem designed to bring into entrepreneurial and community prosperity, and the host of the Minneapolis chapter of CEO Solutions, a peer accountability group for CEOs running the Traction EOS business management system. He's an international speaker, and I'm excited for him to speak here in Minnesota.
Thank you, Chum. Well, so the first question I have to answer, as soon as I open my mouth, is where is he from? To which I usually say Osseo. It's up on the northwest corner. I have a strange accent up there. I'm originally South African. My dad was born British. My mother was Dutch. See if you can follow this, okay? I was born in South Africa, but I went to stay with a family from New Zealand for 5 years in Tennessee, which is enough to screw up anybody's accent. So if I sound Australian, that's why. I do want to thank you all for coming out here, the brave, the few, the proud, the frozen, right? And I want to thank Rick for the Club E program. I think it's a fantastic program. I got to know it up in Minneapolis, and Chum for starting the franchise here in St. Paul. And also for our intrepid video folks back there, Michael and Blake, thank you for what you're doing and then getting that out there. So thank you to everybody for being here. A little bit about the invitation. You know, you've got to admire Chum. The way she sells is fantastic. She comes up to me, she goes, Earl, it's going to be December. It's going to be freezing cold. Nobody's going to show up. Would you like to speak? I said, sure, I'll do it. It's fun. The topic today is position for growth, and we're going to approach it from the point of view of culture. Most times if you talk position for growth, you know, you're talking assets, revenue, sales, strategic forecast, all that kind of thing. But sort of the hidden element in background is this warm fuzzy that nobody really likes to talk a lot about, and that's culture. Because how exactly do you measure it? How do you tell if you've got a good one or a bad one? What is it exactly? And yet, if you stop and think about it, nothing's going to happen without it. Culture is kind of your way. Does that make sense? If you think about the word just in general of how culture interacts, it's the art, it's the music, it's the stories, it's the common shared beliefs, it's the ideology, it's the way people relate to you. Minnesota has a very, very different culture, for instance, than down in the deep south. See, over here, they take a long time to warm up, but once you make a friend for life. In the deep south, you're a friend in an instant, and they pat you on the back, and they're feeling for the place where to stick the knife in if they ever don't like you. Right? But the hospitality is great. You know, you can say anything you want down south if you smile and say God love you afterwards, and you can get away with it. Here you have this thing called Minnesota nice, which is just another way of saying passive aggressive. But what is it that defines culture? It's your way. I want to start with a quote here by Zig Ziglar. Success. Zig's definition to me, I think, is one of the more useful ones. Success is where opportunity and preparedness meet. How many of you, show of hands, and by the way, this will get a little interactive at some point. You will be able to talk back to me. But how many of you have been in that situation where you see an opportunity come your way and you're just like, man, if only I had. I wish I could. And you can see the opportunity staring you in the face. You're absolutely in no position to take advantage of it. Ben Larson, who handles operations on our side, and I were driving in on 610 this morning, right as we crossed 169. Those of you who know that strip, it is going to become Bloomington North. Target City's going in there. I mean, they're opening up to 94, the whole deal. I've been watching that thing for 14 years. Going, man, if I knew how to put a commercial real estate deal together. Why? Opportunity is there. Preparedness and positioning aren't. Because I've positioned myself in other places. It's not a bad thing. I'm just doing something else. Right? But you get the two have to work together. It's not just having the opportunity. You've got to be prepared and positioned for that opportunity in order to take maximum advantage of it. So the question that I want you to have in the back of your mind, or the questions for today, is your company positioned to grow? The difference between an amateur pool player and a pro is when an amateur gets to the table, they play the ball to the pocket. I want this ball to go in that pocket. A pro plays the cue ball. They go, where is the cue ball going to go next? So when I put this ball in the pocket, I am positioned to make the next play. And if you think about growing your company from positioning to positioning, from peak to peak, not, oh, we want to grow 5% this year or 7% or whatever your number is, which, by the way, is actually going backwards, but that's another talk for another day, all right? But if you think, I am growing my company to be positioned to be able to do the next thing. It's a slightly different mentality, and it gets you out of that Monday to Friday, week to week grind of being so busy in your business that you never take your head out and actually look and work on your business. So that's your first question. Is your company positioned to grow? The second, is your culture prepared for it? Because if your way of doing business is not at the level, hear me very carefully, if your way of doing business is not at the level that you want to get to, you'll never achieve it. See, most people when they do business, they play at the level they're at. You actually, it's like years ago, somebody tried to teach me piano. They never got very far, but I got enough to muck around on the keyboard, right? And this little teacher, Mary Boland, had this ruler, and she'd make me do drills. And she'd lean out, nicest, sweetest little southern old lady, you know, and beat the tar out of my knuckles. It's a bit bizarre, but anyway, okay. But if I were to play a piece at, I forget what it was, 94 beats a minute or whatever it was, she would take the metronome and she would push it to like 136. And I'd be just about dislocating my fingers, tripping over all the notes and everything. And then she'd back it up to like 110. All of a sudden it was easy. And when I got to 94, it was like, I'm so bored. This is so slow, right? You need to be in the habit of doing that with your company as well. And that's how you got to play. Is a culture prepared for the growth that you want? And then will your performance, particularly today's conversation is a leadership conversation. Is everybody okay with this? We're talking about culture from a leadership point of view. We're not talking about management. We're not talking implementation and tactics and software and all the rest of it. We are talking leadership, development of culture. Is the performance of your leaders currently geared to support the growth that you want in the future? If not, what are your plans to get there? So those are the three questions I want you to hold in background as we go through this thing. And then finally, as a quality control check, are they passionate about it? Let me give you the difference between vision and division in your leadership team. It's very, very simple. My favorite animal here in Minnesota is a duck. So what I want is I want everybody to think of a duck. Everybody thinking of a duck? Does everybody know what I'm talking about when I say think of a duck? Yes? Right. And right there's the problem. Because we all have the illusion that we understand each other. You know why? Because we use the same word. You see, vision is not poetry on the wall. Vision is what you see. I don't go into great big fancy definitions. They don't work. Okay, I use simple definitions. Truth is what is, right? Vision is what you see. That's Earl level. You understand? So let me ask you a question. Kristen, what color was your duck? It was blue. That has got to be the weirdest answer I have ever. I've had Donald Duck, I've had rubber ducks, I've never had a blue duck. But it is Minnesota in December, so okay. It's cold. Tim, how about you? What color was your duck? Okay. Anybody get Donald? Nobody got Donald Duck? What's wrong with you people? That's un-American. Anybody got the yellow duck? There we go. Now we know the guys who played in the bath when they were kids, right? Okay. My point is, vision is what you see. And just because we use the same words, we still saw a whole bunch of different pictures in our head. So when you stand up as a leader in your company and go, has everybody got the vision of the company? Yeah. Repeat it back to me. And they say it back and you go, you got it? You understand it? Yep. And you don't check. Tell me what that actually looks like. You're going to end up with divided vision, or division for short. And that's where the problems come in. And that's a little bit of the art of leadership, is getting everybody on the same page, operating together. So today, here are our intentions. 3 things I want to accomplish by the time we're done. I'm going to give you a set of leadership lenses, 4 of them. 4 ways you can look at your company and your company's culture, just as a way of saying, are we on track? Are we producing what we want? The second thing is a performance checklist. Now, I'm going to cheat on this, and here's why. This is a 3-day seminar, which a partner and I crammed down into 90 minutes. And then Chum said, can you come present this in 40? And I gave her the outline. She goes, that's a lot to cover in 40 minutes. And I looked at it and I went, you know what, I agree with you. So I'm taking the checklist out and I'm going to offer it to you afterwards as a bribe. Is everybody okay with that? I'll tell you exactly when, right? And then an effective approach to custom configuring a growth-oriented culture. We're just going to give you a couple of steps and pointers to look at and say, make sure these things are in place to get the culture of your enterprise in place. So, quick question. I'll take about 90 seconds on this. Who is Earl? International leadership trainer and executive performance coach with a whole bunch of mind-bending stuff. I like to joke with people and say I was trained in the dark arts of Egypt, right? And watch them run away. It's kind of fun. My expertise is in communication, cognition, and culture. Here's what that means. How you communicate internally and externally creates pictures in your brain which drive your feelings, which drive your behavior. That behavior collectively, along with the beliefs that support it, become your culture and influence your company. Did everybody follow that? Okay. Basically, what you say is what you become, right? And what you share together defines the culture of your organization. So that put me in a position of mentoring business owners, leaders, entrepreneurs, and helping create more vibrant economies within communities. I'd go into communities, and that'd be blown out. Like, for instance, one of the projects we did was Osceola over in Wisconsin. Polaris pulled out, and they had Vision 600. They lost 600 jobs, right like that, just about killed Main Street. And we had a conversation with Tim Johnson. We said, how do we put this town back together? And maybe we could split off Eagle Motorcycles to talk to Polaris, get them 300 new jobs back. Let's get some stuff going at the airport. And we're just kind of like the wizards behind the curtain in background, just, you know, having lots of coffee and eating pie at the pie shop. That was my job. It's fantastic, right? And I get paid for that. It's actually pretty cool. But the net result is if you go to Osceola today, it's the best detour you don't want to take. Have you guys seen the place? Okay? It's kind of fun. So that's what I like to do for fun, and every once in a while I get paid for it. Mostly I get pie and chickens is usually what happens. But anyway, I started looking at the idea of socioeconomic prosperity. I'll tell you why in a minute. And I started to realize, you know, when you look at everybody who's spending money, whether it's education or healthcare or government or whatever, there's only one that's at the front of the train, that's the engine driving the whole thing. There's only one service in society that actually creates the money that everybody else spends. And guess what that is? Business. And that's why I'm here. Because without you, this culture, this society, this world, the freedom to fight about who should be president or not president, all of those things simply doesn't exist if you and I and all of us together don't do the work that we do. We are the brick and mortar of an effective civilization. Does that make sense? So that led me into working with business owners and helping them create what I call a prosperity-minded view of the world. Stop trying to get out of debt, stop trying to get out of poverty and all the rest of it. Just go and create prosperity. It'll take care of itself in the same way that if you want to get the darkness out of the room, just turn the lights on. Make sense? It's a different question, different conversation. So that's where I ended up. In short, I'm a recovering missionary. You just can't get out of the habit of helping people. Okay. Today, I'm waving the flag for CEO Solutions. We're a peer accountability group for CEOs in growth mode that are 1 million to 50, and they are running the Traction EOS system. We have monthly groups of about 10, and we literally run the CEOs through their own level 10 meeting and say, this is what you inflict on other people, now suffer through it yourself. All right? And so we do therapy for CEOs. It's a great program. If you want to know about it, ask me about it afterwards. So here's a question. Who's really leading your company? Now, you might gather from this person's face that it's a horrifying question when you actually find the answer. You see, a leader is somebody who can influence behavior. So the question is, in your company, who's really influencing the behavior in your company? Who's defining the culture? Who is casting the vision? Who is creating the set of stories that give people meaning and purpose and engagement and motivation? Is that you? Because I can promise you, you put a group of people together, somebody's doing it. If you're going to be a leader, leaders go first, right? So you should be out front. Culture is a leadership conversation. Consultants love to say this. Culture eats strategy for breakfast. How many of you guys, I see a couple of heads nodding, how many of you are business consultants or turnaround experts, anything like that, have seen this one go down? Right? You sit in a room and you write out the plan and you get the vision statement, the mission statement, and you get the pro forma and you get it all laid out and it just goes zzz. You're like, what happened? Culture just ate strategy for breakfast, right? Makes sense? It's that important. So who creates the culture? People. I would say from a communication perspective, one of the biggest things that we have to get out of the habit of doing as business people is stop talking about processes as things. Stop talking about these nebulous abstract concepts like the company, culture, right? Consultants love doing this. Why? They come in, they promise you all these vague, ambiguous words, and you go, how are you going to solve it? And then they answer you with another set of vague, ambiguous words. True? Okay, having been in the consulting world, let me let you into a secret, and probably a couple of consultants in the room don't want me to say this, and I might get shanghaied for this afterwards. Do you folks realize what the number one job of a consultant is? The number one priority. That's what it should be. We have an idealist in the room. I agree with you. Here's what it is. To create more work for the consultant. Right? And that you got to be very, very careful with this, because when you get into these things, instead of talking in vague abstract terms, so what do we mean by culture? Well, it's a process. It's people saying something. It's people doing something. It's people reacting in certain ways. And if I can see it, if I can hear it, if I can touch it, in some case even taste and smell, and I can check it off a list, done or not done, now I've got something I can measure and I can say, yes, we have it, or no, we don't. Does that make sense? Otherwise, you get tied up in fuzzy land and nothing gets done. So, ultimately, the leaders in your organization are those people that define the culture. Those people who tell the stories. Those people who create the emotional responses. Those people who drive the behavior. Those people who create the belief systems. Those people who paint the picture and the vision of the company, regardless of what you got written on the wall. If you've got an influential person in your company that walks out and goes, oh yeah, that was a great show, but you know what, this thing's going to tank. Guess what they just did? They stuck a picture in everybody's head of the thing tanking. And that's the vision in your culture. Does that make sense? I'm being a little harsh here, beating up on you just a little bit. You handle it? So here's the scary part. The leader, the person who sets the culture, and that may not be you. This is where leadership ceases to be a title or a position, or even credibility or training or credentials or anything else. Leadership is a who in your company. I challenge you. This is a direct challenge. I challenge you to go home today and say, who in my company is it? See if you can pinpoint the person or individuals that is actually defining the culture of this organization. I can promise you that if you are an appointed leader in a title and it's someone else, if you haven't identified them and they leave, if it was good, you're sunk. If it was bad, you're going to be doing yourself a huge favor. Does it make sense? Okay? You need to figure out who this person is or who these people are. And your biggest time should be, your biggest investment of time should be in your leadership. Here's the problem with entrepreneurs. You bootstrap, you start your company, and guess what? It's push, 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 hustle, 50, 60, 70 hours a week, drive, and you're motivated by being driven. So how do drivers try to motivate? They try to drive. And what they don't know is how to inspire. But there's a little thing that happens somewhere between team and organizational leadership. If you want to go a little further than that, it's perverse, actually, because you spend your whole life learning how to be quicker, faster, better, cheaper, more credentials, know more than the other guy, be more innovative, be more creative, do more, be more productive, be effective, and all the rest of it. And then all of a sudden this line flips. And the smartest thing you can do from that point on is know less, do less, slow down. Makes sense? It's exactly opposite of everything you've been trained. I tell people who are graduating out of BNI, when they get to that level, I say, everything you learned in BNI is not wrong. It's exactly right for that level. But as soon as you take all that training and you take it to the next level of leadership, it's exactly the wrong thing to do. You have to do all the opposite things you learned. It's weird, right? So, if you are an entrepreneur, you need to start slowing down. Start smelling the roses. Never mind the bottom line hard numbers, which is what everybody goes for, and start asking the why questions. Start thinking in terms of relationships and effects and impacts and systems and stuff like that. Because unfortunately, what most people do when pushing fails, they resort to manipulation, to control, coercion, all the rest of it, or as some people say, morale will improve. When it does, the beatings will cease, right? Let that one sink in for a bit, right? Not that we ever know anybody like that. So, that rarely works. Except to demotivate. Because if you've got high talent leadership, what's the one thing they really want? Let me express myself. If you've got somebody, then they're a leader and they know they're good. They are creative, they are problem solvers, they are innovators, they are charging, all the rest of it. They're like racehorses at the Triple Crown. And they're in the last stretch and they're going, take the reins off and let me run. Make sense? So if you want a high performance culture, you have got to figure out how to unleash the leadership talent that you have rather than trying to micromanage them. Which means you literally have to learn to become the dumbest person in the room. Not our natural instinct, because our first response when we have talent issues is, well, offer more pay and compensation. You know, maybe if we advertise and promote, we can find the right person. And, you know, maybe we can pirate them from our competition. Or, you know what, we tried all that, it didn't work, and you know what, there's no leadership out there anymore. It's like trying to find good people. Have you heard this one? It's impossible to find good people these days. That's going around. That's like a mind virus that's in the Minneapolis, Twin Cities culture right now. Am I right? Am I wrong? Okay. Guys, there are good people here. There are tons of good people. There are more good people per capita in this Twin City region than anywhere else in the country. I'm convinced of that. Tony Robbins has a nice way of saying it. He says, people are not lazy, they're just insufficiently inspired. Okay? You know what the number one reason for rejecting or leaving a position is? So you're building a leadership team, right? You're building the people around you. Why do you do that? Because you can't do everything. Let me just give you an upgrade from an entrepreneur mindset to an organization mindset. That happened to me. It was painful when it happened, right? I sat down one day and I couldn't get everything done. And I was just running out of hours in the week. The typical E-Myth problem. If you haven't read the book, Michael Gerber, The E-Myth Revisited, go read it, right? And I sat down and I went, okay, mastery takes 10,000 hours. That means 7 to 10 years, depending on how much time you put into it. To be reasonably good at something takes 3 to 5 years. How many functions do I have in a small business? Minimally, a half a dozen, right? I got sales, I got my operations, I got my production, I got my admin. You understand what I'm saying? Okay, so 5 times 3 years is 15. I'm 50. At 65, I'll begin to get reasonably good. You don't have time for that. Do you understand that? So if you are going to create a high-performance culture, you've got to get good at one thing and one thing only. And that is creating high-performance teams to leverage what you would take the next 30, 40 years to learn in each area, multiplied by the number of areas, you'd be way past a century and you still wouldn't get there. Does this make sense? So the day it stopped for me, I looked across, my wife and I shared an office. I said, honey, stop. She goes, what do you mean stop? She was working on some brochure or something. I said, stop. She goes, what? I said, everything. She looks at me and goes, why? I said, well, I have this little wristband, okay? And it says, what would Richard Branson do? Tongue in cheek for those of you who can take it. Okay. Right. I said, would Richard Branson be doing this? Would he be doing a brochure and doing a website like I was doing it? And she's like, no. I said, why not? She goes, he had to hire somebody. I said, good, so why don't we? She goes, we haven't got the money. I said, huh. I said, let me rephrase that. If Richard Branson got wiped out and didn't have anything except one last nickel, that's it, that's all he had, would he be putting up a website and creating a brochure? What's the answer? No. I said, so we have to stop. Well, that was a dumb decision. That's jumping off the dock, hanging halfway in the air, going, hey, wait a minute. Right? Graceful transition in hindsight would have made more sense. But I'm just not wired like that. If something doesn't make sense to me, I stop. Bang. So my wife looks at me, knowing me, and she goes, we're going to go broke, aren't we? I was like, yep. I said, until we figure this out, because if I don't, then I have an escape hatch to do something different that's easy and comfortable for me, and I'll keep myself being trapped in my own success in the mediocre. Does that make sense? And I'd rather go broke. God bless her heart. That's what she said. She looked at me and she went, okay. That's why I love you, right there. That's for life. Okay. The first one didn't do so well with that one. Okay, we bumped heads, right? Okay. Number one reason for leaving a position. Management issues. Isn't that interesting? Why? Because here's the antithesis. Remember I said I'll give you a list of some inhibiting factors that inhibit your growth of culture? Here's part of that list, right? These are the things. If you've got a company where there's indecision, there's no direction of purpose, no training, the delegation doesn't work properly. Do I need to go on? I bet that every one of you can sit and make a short list of a half a dozen things saying, at this company, here's why we are not going as fast as we could. Correct? So that's the basis of the list. All of that together becomes your culture. So here are the lenses. Number one, think of culture as a strategic tool. Why? Because if I have an Olympic athlete, do they want to go play for or perform for the high school track team? No. Do your pro league players want to play in the B leagues? No. So who's going to solve your problems? Who's going to get your company to grow? Who's going to push a high-performance culture into your business? Top talent, right? This is not an HR talk here. You understand? But what I'm saying is that you cannot put a healthy chicken in a sick hen house. It'll die or get very, very sick. So if you want the healthy chicken, you create the healthy hen house. If you want top-performing talent, you have to look at your culture as a strategic tool, and you have to ask yourself this question. If I was a top performer, why would I want to be here? You've got to answer that with absolute clarity. And if you don't have the answer, go and find the top performers. Here's how you do it. You ask around town, who are the top performers? People will tell you. And you go ask them, what do you love about where you work and what you do? And they will tell you. And then you ask 2 more questions. What do you mean by that? Because they might have a blue duck and you've got a yellow one, right? And then you ask them, why is it important? And start building yourself an awareness of culture as a strategic tool. You want an investor viewpoint. I'll cover that. Let me just give you the list. You want to look at it from a point of view of leadership bench strength, and you want to look at it from a point of view of sales perspective. Let's run through those really quickly. And I got 12 minutes. We'll make it. Right? I'll just speak South African, which is 800 words a minute. Right? Culture attracts talent. Have we got that? Top players want to be in a winning team. And it's the people that build your business. So a major attraction for top quality people is a company that knows what it's about. This is our purpose. This is our vision. This is where we're going, and here's what we need to get there. You in or out? Next. Simple. Every business growth book, every management course, everybody will tell you this. How many of you actually have sat down and done it? If you did, all of us consultants in the room would be out of business, right? Makes sense? Thinking like an investor. Any of you know Marty Nyman? We should talk. I'd love to know what happened to him. Years ago, I spoke with a guy called Marty Nyman. I interviewed him in his home. And at the time, he was representing various investor groups, and he was the front man. And these investor groups would say, we've got money, but we don't have the time to do the research. Besides, we're a bunch of doctors, attorneys, and all the rest of it. And we actually don't know that much about business. So Marty, would you do the legwork for us and go and find us good investment opportunities? And Marty did this for several years. And I sat down with him and I said, okay, so what makes a good investment? This list is Marty's list. Okay? Just want to give credit where credit is due. And he turned around and he said, I'll give you a list. But he said, what you have to understand is the order of this thing is critically important. Guess what was number 1 on his list? Culture. He said, we don't pass that one. I don't even look at the company. He said, if the culture's rotten, it's a rotten investment, period, I'm out. I don't even do the rest of the assessment. That's how important it was. Number 2 was vision. Where are you going? Are you clear about it? Number 3, leadership. Proven history of success. I said to him, Marty, isn't leadership number 1? Because, isn't the leadership that defines the culture and vision? He goes, no, if you've got a great company, says, take Lamborghini or whatever. The culture and the vision are established, and Stefan Winkelmann comes in and says, I am not here except as a steward of the brand and of the customer experience. The culture and vision were cast. I can change it somewhat, but your leadership will come and go. People get hired and fired all the time. Do you understand? The culture and the vision needs to endure, and then the leadership needs to be a steward of that. They can help shape and redefine it and move it forward, but you better have a good leadership team, and then, and only then, do you have management process. And finally, if that's all in place, you go, fine, do you have the money to sustain it? Is it profitable? Do you have the money to sustain it? Let's talk about capitalization and finance. In that order. Lens number 4, bench strength. Any of you remember Sound of Music? I don't mean the show, I mean the store. Oh, yeah. Okay. Dick and Brad had one store, Sound of Music, in Minneapolis, and they were great at running a single location. What they didn't know how to do was how to expand that location out into multiple locations and out of state. They hired a guy called Glenn Townsend. He said, Glenn, can you do this? Glenn said, leave it to me. Brian Dunn can handle Minneapolis, which he did. And Glenn went out of town. The first place they went down was Quad Cities, Iowa. 9 months, Glenn would take a cashier walking in at the front door. 9 months later, there would be a store manager opening a new store. How did he do that? Because he wouldn't let anybody promote until they filled their position. And at the top levels of management, at the store manager, he was looking 7 levels deep, saying, who among the cashiers is the next store manager? That's bench strength. And he built a system to do that. That's why Best Buy became Best Buy. So it's not just who's on your leadership team, who's on the other side of them, and how deep is that, and what's the plan to groom these people up into positions of leadership. That establishes an enduring culture that lasts beyond any one single leader. So the company doesn't rise or fall with you or anybody else. Make sense? So it's a leader of leader's perspective, and culture then is what you pass on to that next generation. If you haven't seen the TED Talk by Simon Sinek, 3 Golden Rings, okay? He says most people say with what they're doing, and then they talk about how they're doing it. Very few people actually talk about the why. There's one even in the middle of that, and it's the who. Who are you? And that's the hardest one, because leadership is a process of replicating what's on the inside of you. So if somebody comes up to you and they go, what's the first question? What are we doing? Oh, well, we're putting out banquet tables. Then they go, so what's the next question they ask? Well, how do I do this? Right? And now you get into your management process. Then they go, well, why are you in such a hurry? Why does it have to be so perfect? And they start asking the why questions. You understand? So leadership is this process of externalizing what's in your head, in your heart, and saying, here's what we're doing, here's how we're doing it, here's why we're doing it. But the hardest one to replicate is, here's who I am. Here's who we are as a company. And this is our way as a result. And to get that into somebody else's heart and watch them start living in the same way. There's a very old word for it. These days we call it mentoring. But the point is, this little graph, I call it the upside-down pyramid. If you operate this way, the depth of your leadership increases to the degree that you raise other people up. Write that one down. Zig used to say, people don't know when you've made a profound statement, so you have to tell them. That was a profound statement. Okay. Change your language. Instead of asking yourself, how can I get my people to? That's an exploitive statement. It's a self-serving statement. Start asking yourself, how can I inspire them to? Remember Tony? People aren't lazy, they're just insufficiently inspired. If you can answer that question, you become an iconic leader. You become an inspirational leader who leads even if you're not in the room. Like Mother Teresa. Dead and gone and not in the room. And there's still a lot of people who are influenced by her leadership, right? Iconic leadership. Just be warned, just because you're an owner, just because you found the company doesn't make you a leader. A lot of people, they like the ego and they like the arrogance and they strut around, well, I'm an owner of the company. I should be doing this and this and this. That's a boardroom conversation. Have it in the boardroom, not at work. Okay? Your leadership role at work is different, okay? Sales perspective. Learn to sell your company. Why? Because if you're attracting other leaders, you are going to have to compel them emotionally to follow you. And you are going to have to learn 21st century flexibility. The days of command and control and, yeah, let me broadcast and I'm the only one in the catalog and you have to buy and let me tell you why you have a need, all of that is gone. There are so many competitors out there that you have to learn to adapt to their perceived needs. So from their point of view, it's a seller's market. They are the talent, you're buying. Why should I come work for you? It's like banks, okay? Banks have to get their head around. Why should I give you my money to invest? Banks are finally learning, oh, we should actually, we need to compete for the customer's money, right? Same thing. On the other side, from their point of view, it's a buyer's market, and you're selling your company. Either way, they've got the advantage. That's the point. So what is it that your company has that will attract top leadership to form your culture? Harlan teaches something called New Paradigm Selling. In other words, lock your product in the trunk and talk about them. What do you want? What do you need? What inspires you? What motivates you? What are you trying to create in the world? What do you mean by that? Why is that important to you? And then shut up and listen. Become the dumbest person in the room. And they will create the company and the culture you want. So there's a 4-lens summary. Think about culture as a strategic tool. Think about your company as an investor. Think about your bench strength and sales perspective. Factors that inhibit growth, I told you I was going to give you a bribe. Here's why. Asking what we don't want is better asking sometimes than what we do want. So if you can't start with your dreams, start with your nightmares. And then ask, what do you want instead? So, symptoms of a repulsive culture. Come and talk to me. Here's how it's going to work. If you want that list, give me a business card right on the back list. I'll send it to you. I will not spam you. I'll not put you on the newsletter list. I don't want people on my newsletter list. that don't want my newsletter. Just don't want it. Okay? Make sense? So just write list. If you are below 1 million, I'm running into a lot of people that are below 1 million, they're looking to break 1 million, and we're thinking about maybe starting a program for them. No commitment, no promise there. But if that might be of interest to you, just write BAM on the back of your card. Okay? If you want to be in a peer accountability group, just put a CEO on there. And we'll talk to it. Ben, would you put your hand up? That's Ben. Would you please give Ben your cards and we'll make sure we'll get in touch with you. Okay? So there's my bribe. Swap your card, my list. How does that work? Let me give you a tip. This is a course by itself, but here's how you customize your culture. You ask yourself the question, how should our culture look and why? And I'm just going to give you one example. What you do is you take human behavior, you put the two opposites on either end, and there's a continuum, and you say, where do we sit? So for instance, an accounting firm. High energy, low energy, somewhere in between. There you go, different kind of accounting firm. I'd be interested to hear. Okay, sales to millennials. High energy, low energy. You see what I'm saying? That's just one factor. Do you want people who are consistent or do you want people who are innovative? Again, it's your personal question. Do you see how this works out? There's not a right answer, there's not a wrong answer. Do you want people who are just routine all the time? Or do you want people who are constantly trying to change everything all the time? Or somewhere in between? Where do you set it? So you look at the job and you go, what does this need? And where do we need to be? And you write that down, and then you go look for the people who play well in that space. Does that make sense? It's a different way. Please, please, please do not hire talent from your org chart. Okay? That's the deadly mistake. We have a position, we have a title, we need to hire somebody for that. That's the deadly mistake. Look at what you got to get done, look at what you need to get it done, and then find the person who just thrives and delights in doing that. That's how you define your culture. That right there was worth the whole course, if you understand what I just said. Now, the last part of this, I said here are a couple of steps to building out your culture. I think the brochure said 8, it's 7. We lied, sorry. Okay. I can give you more if you really want, okay? 7 points in attracting culture. Have a competitive story. This is who we are. This is where we came from. This is why we started doing what we did. This is all the stuff we came through to get here. And this is, here we are, and here's why we are, never mind, I'll stay away from that, okay? Right? We're just going to do a lot of winning. You know what I'm saying? The guy's a businessman. Whether you like him or not, he got it. You understand? He had a story, and what he told, hear me carefully, he told the completion of the story in the future so everybody could see it. Scared the hell out of some and inspired others. Didn't matter. It moved people. Understand? You need an operational system. Like I said, we run a CEO group for traction. I have another one that I've developed for larger scale enterprises development. But you've got to have some way of getting everybody on the same page. You have to have a team identity. We are the SEALs. We are the Rangers. We are the winning team. Does it make sense? Got to know who they are. You have to be masters of your craft. Do what you do with excellence. To become extraordinary doesn't take much, just a little extra on ordinary. You know why? Because mediocrity is so rampant these days. It doesn't take much to set yourself apart. It really doesn't. One word. Care. That's it. Think about it. Why do you pay $200 to my daughter to detail your car versus paying $19 just for the local car wash to run through with a vacuum cleaner? Because she cares, they don't. Why did I pay $70 a haircut? You couldn't tell her today I got dumped on with a bunch of snow, all right? Instead of like 12, Ben goes, sorry, right? Instead of $12 a Grey Clips. Because Danny cares. Besides, she gives a great scalp massage at Edica Salon. There's a free plug for Danny. One of my clients, right? But she cares enough to do that. And I'll pay an extra $50, $60 for that. Think about that. That's almost like $1,000 a year. One word, care, right? Management by reality. Know your numbers. Don't deal with impressions. Don't deal with gut instinct. Go with your numbers. This is what's really, really, really happening. Decisiveness. If you're agonizing more than 72 hours, you are agonizing too long, Make a decision, move on. It's not sometimes about making the right decision, it's about making a decision and making it right. Make the decision work. If you're going to screw it up fast so you can back out early with minimal investment. Does that make sense? Decisiveness is huge. And then finally, forward motion. Where are you going? We recommend 10 or 12 years, 3 years. Where are you going in the end of 2017? Back it up by quarter. And what are the big rocks you're going to focus on this quarter? After that, it's to your leadership team. It's 2 questions. How's it going? How can we help? Did you do the routine stuff? How's the project work? And did you do the things you said you would do? It's that simple. It's not that hard. But if you infuse that whole thing with caring, people will know you care, and they will appreciate being pushed to do more than they ever thought they were possible or capable of. And they might hate you, they might swear at you, they might, you might be the drill sergeant, and everybody's just like, ah, and then they come at the end and they go, oh, I love the guy, he saved my life. Understand? People are craving that. And if you, as a leader, can give that to your leadership team and teach them how to share that with the people that you lead, you'll have a high-performance culture and become like a magnet. Just attract people to your clients, top talent, and the whole world starts to open up for you. Hope that's useful to you. Thank you for the opportunity to share.